So thank you, guys. How much time did it take to produce that thing?
Approximately 10 months.
So yeah, it's about 10 months of work to do something like that. So really intense. So today I just want, before Simon is going to talk about the pipeline, how we produce the game with the engine and everything, I just want to give you the experience of the game in a nutshell. So what is the SX Human Revolution? It's a game in which you play a character that is called Adam Jensen. You're a security specialist working for a biotech corporation, and your job is to defend the interests of that corporation, actually. It's a game that is set in 2027, so we're trying to make a world that is very close to ours, like we're trying to ground players in reality, so we're not trying to go too crazy with the sci-fi setting. We really try to be low-key, even though we have things like the double-deck CD, that crazy stuff, so sometimes it's also fun to go crazy with some things. But as a general thing, we really try to ground the players in reality. A Deus Ex game is not a Deus Ex game without a huge conspiracy. So you have a massive story to discover. There are layers after layers that, as you play through the game, you're going to unravel what's going on really, and eventually you'll have a key part to play in this adventure. 2027, it's a world where humanity is at a turning point. There are a lot of innovations. There's a lot of people now that can access to augmentations that improve the bodies. They can be smarter, they can be faster, they can be stronger, etc. And which is a good thing. I mean, a lot of people think it's a good thing and they really want to push it forward. But we have other people on the other side of the subject who are really against it, and they think we shouldn't try to play God. And basically, there's a conflict boiling there, and you're caught in the middle of this, and you need to figure out what some people are trying to do with that issue, actually. So this game is an action RPG that is mainly played from the first-person perspective, but we have some contextual third-person segments. And also it's a game with 4 gameplay pillars, which you can play with combat, stealth, hacking, and social. I'll talk a little bit more about those things in the next slide. And what is really important about Human Revolution is that you can tackle the objectives the way you want. So it's not a game that tells you how to do the things. It tells you what you have to do, and you figure out how you want to do that. Also, it's a game about choice. You decide how you upgrade your character. You have several augmentations to fulfill your combat abilities, stealth abilities, hacking, or social. So it's really up to you to build up the character the way you want. And also, during the adventure, you'll have, like I said, to play a big part where you're going to decide the fate of mankind. So you'll have important decisions to make. And also, like I've said, we're not telling you how to play the game. You figure it out by yourself, basically. So the core mechanics. Combat and stealth are the 2 primary modes that you're going to use during the game. So you can play totally combat, you can play totally stealth, or you can go a mix and match of everything depending on how you feel how to play the game, basically. So, and you're not forced to kill anyone. So that is very important, minus some forced encounter, but globally you can play this game without violence. Those are the primary modes. Hacking and social are the secondary modes that support your exploration, support more means to get the jobs done, to get more rewards and things like that. So, and eventually you can also have some resolutions to conflicts that are totally non-violent without having to rely on combat or stealth. So it can be very interesting. Combat is tactical combat. So it's not a game that you run and shoot all over the place. You can try it. When you play the game eventually, you'll see that it doesn't work very well. It's a challenging game. You need to think, you need to take cover, you need to plan your next move and everything. So we really wanted to engage the players into something where they will have to plan out before going into the action. For the stealth, it relies mainly on the staying out of the line of sight, and you need to to manage the sound you produce. So if you stay out of sight and you manage the sound you produce, you'll be fine. So it's always to go from A to B. You're not forced to kill or take down any characters, even though you can do it. It makes things a little bit more interesting. And that's pretty much it. For hacking, we're going with a gameplay where you need to access some electronic devices, and there's a network that you need to infiltrate. And basically, you enter from the I/O port, you need to get to the registry, but there's a subroutine system that is trying to trace you back to your entry point. So you need to figure out how to get there before it traces you back. And the thing is that this kind of mini game stays in the game world. So you're not pulled out of the experience. You can still be attacked and everything. So again, you need to choose the moment to unlock a new door or whatnot. So I won't say it enough. You need to be very careful in that game. Social, it's another important aspect. We have several means to talk with people in the game, but we have one that we call the social boss fights, in which you try to convince someone to help you out with something. But the way it works, it's not a puzzle where you need to figure out left, up, down, whatever. It's more psychological. It's more you try to understand what this character is saying, why he's reluctant to help you out, and you need to figure out what is the best way to answer to that character to convince him to give you what you want. So, and every time you play, it's not necessarily exactly the same thing he's going to say. So you need to adapt and everything. It's not because you did it once that now you know the trick how to convince someone to help you out. So it gives you in a nutshell what are the 4 gameplay pillars that you're going to experience during Deus Ex Human Revolution. In terms of the RPG elements, because it's an action RPG, we have a lot of focus on character customization. So we have tons of augmentations that will allow you to be a better fighter, to be a better stealth agent, also to be better at social interactions, or even with hacking to be able to hack more, I would say, sophisticated devices and get bigger rewards and things like that. Also, we have weapon customizations. So you can upgrade the various weapons you have to upgrade the rate of fire, the damage you do, that kind of things. We also have different special upgrades that will modify the behavior of certain guns and everything like that. And like I've said, you can play the game without killing anyone. We also have non-lethal weapons, so you can just disable certain enemies without killing them. Also, we go back to, for those of you guys who are familiar with the Deus Ex franchise, we're going to the traditional grid inventory system in which you decide what you carry with you or whatnot, and you cannot have everything. You can combine things together and everything. So, like I said, it's choice and consequences. You choose how you play, but you choose like what gun you have with you, what kind of augmentations that are going to support the way you want to play the fantasy and things like that. And like I've said, social interactions, are really important. So I talked about the social boss fights, but you also have other encounters with other characters where you can learn just more broad information about things you have to do and people you can meet and things like that. We also have side quests where you learn way more about the game world and your mission and your own character and things like that. Also, this game has an open-ended philosophy. Basically, it means that what is important to us is that we want the players to feel creative in the way they solve the problems. They have a lot of tools at hand, and we really encourage them to experience with the tools and figure out what is the best way to overcome the challenges they meet. For that, we have our levels are built with a multi-path, multi-solution approach to it. So it means the multipath is that all our maps have several entry points, but they also have several routes within the maps themselves and everything. And the multi-solution aspect is that, like we said, we don't build a challenge to be solved in just one way. We build a challenge to be solved with whatever you have, and you need to figure it out. And this is where your creativity as players come in at play, basically. And also, without going in much detail, it's a game where, depending on how you're going to play, it's going to end up with multiple endings, and I will not talk about that today. So, so in a nutshell, it is a Deus Ex Human Revolution from a conceptual standpoint. And now Simon is going to present to you a little bit more of the pipeline with the engine and how we build the game. Thank you very much.
All right. Hi, I'm Simon. I'm the lead programmer on the Sex Human Revolution. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you from what happens when you take a bunch of people starting up a new studio with new technology and getting the design that JF just told you about, and how do we produce a game, and how do we use the various tools that we had at our disposition to create the game you will be able to play very soon. So the process behind the Sex Human Revolution. First, we can start about the people behind the game. Basically, we have a multidisciplinary team of about 20 disciplines, where about half of them are content creators, guys that are going to create content, textures, models, animations, that are going to be used by the engine to create the game. So we have animators, level artists, level designers, modelers for props and character. We have texture, lighting artists, FX artists, sound designers, and UI artists. And of course, you have the art director. The art director is there to drive the art direction for the game, and then the tech team is there to make sure that we can get the wills of the game director and the art director and create the game that fully realize their vision of it. So in the other side of the production teams are tech guys and management guys. So you have programmers and technical artists that works hands in hand to drive the data creations. Basically, the programmers are creating the tools and offering support and doing features for everyone. And the technical artists are the guys that are technical enough to know the memory, the CPU constraint brought by the engine and by the consoles, and propagate this information to the art team. We also have a QA tech team based on the team, so everything we do, the tools, the features are being actively tested during development by a small team of QA that provides feedback and then help us building up better tools or fixing problems. We also use a bit of outsourcing, which I won't necessarily get into details today because it's more related to art and it's kind of the same pipelines. And we also have the shared technology group, which is a separate group from the development team that creates tools and help us drive pipeline that we can reuse from project to project. And of course, you have the game designers and the producers. Very important. Now, about the technology, first you should know that since it was a new studio, it was a new license, we didn't have any existing tech that we knew about to build on. So what we did is we look at the other Eidos studios and see what technology they have that we could use to build our games. And the CDC engine was the technology that seemed the more apt to help us realize the game. Basically, it's an engine and tool sets that were first developed at Crystal Dynamics, which is here in California, and which is the studio that worked on most of the Tomb Raider games. So from that, we have another studio that we work with, which are in the Netherlands, which are made of ex-employees from Crystal Dynamics. So those guys are very proficient in the tools, and they were responsible for the rendering modules and for the code tools. So basically, the game editor were those guys' responsibility, and they are guys that have been working on this pipeline for many years, more than a decade for some of them. And aside from that, since the CDC engine was used for developing game at Crystal Dynamics and now at Eidos-Montreal, what we did is that we kind of did some joint development where some features would be coded in Crystal and some other in Eidos, and then we kind of shared that technology and reused the most of it. So the pros of using this engine was that we had a unique rendering system. Basically, it's an in-house rendering system, which means that we could tailor it as much as we wanted to what we needed to do. Is since we had a very specific artistic directions, it was very helpful for us to be in full control of our rendering engine and make sure that we could realize it as much as we can. Related to the rendering system is that we have a great deferred rendering lighting system. So I think that the main strengths are really rendering and lighting in a game, and that help us very much to be able to realize the artistic directions. It's also heavily data-driven, so everything is run by the data. So of course the programmers are developing chunks of features, but how all that goes together and is used in game, it's really up to the level designers or the game designers that can really tweak and create new objects pretty easily. And it also has a pretty efficient runtime code. So it means that I'll talk about the tools, but we have the tools aspect, the engine aspect, and the engine is pretty good and really allowed us to make exactly what we wanted to do. About the cons of using it, I'd say that the first one was ramping up on the technology, because of course it's a new technology. You have people like in different time zones that have the knowledge of it, but it's never like having people in-house to help you. So of course you make some mistakes in the beginning that can stay for the rest of the game, just because you didn't exactly know how things were working. We at a maximum, I think we had a team of 23 programmers working on the project. So of course some of them went to Crystal Dynamics to get ramped up on the tools, but still in the long term there's a lot of areas where we didn't have much knowledge, and even some guys at Crystal or even at Nexus didn't have any knowledge. So which brings me to my other point, is that we had legacy code in many modules. As you'll see later, this is an engine that was used for a while. So lots of people worked on it over the years. It's been started sometime in the mid-90s. So there's some modules that people did never touch, and then those guys maybe left the company or something, and we ended up with a bunch of legacy code that nobody exactly knew why it was there or why it was working that way. So at some point it can cause us problem. Also, we suffered from some unstable tool pipeline in the beginning, not necessarily because the tools were not stable, because the guys at Crystal used them already, but we were trying to do quite a different kind of games than Crystal Dynamics were trying to do. We have a bit more open world, the streaming is different, we had that different density of objects, so by map, so all of those things kind of made some problems with the pipeline appear when they wouldn't necessarily be problematic with the different kind of game that they were doing at Crystals. And also we had a lengthy data build process, so everything was pretty much driven by the data, but at some point you had to build that data to create the final game, and we had to work on the build process to try to make them as efficient as possible. Just to let you know where we're coming from, this is a screenshot from Soul Reaver, which was a game that was developed by the same engine that we're using for the Sex Revolution. So as you can see, it's kind of PS1 quality. So how can we go from there and then do the game that you're seeing the trailers around now? Is that basically when you're going to pre-production, you have milestones where the goal is to create part of the game, we call that a vertical slice, where it's actually a part of the game that's kind of complete, where you just try to prove to yourself and of course to your bosses that what you're trying to achieve is feasible with the technology we had. So at some point they asked, when we entered pre-production, the first step was to create a map, one of the most complex maps we would have in a game, and really make sure that we were able to then create all of the other maps in the game with that technology. Then the next screenshot is a screenshot from the first vertical slice we did. And if you look closely, you'd see that it's not necessarily the artistic direction that we wanted for the game. It's kind of empty. Things didn't necessarily work out exactly how we planned. So when you reach that point, it's a point of questioning where you just ask yourself, what do we do now? Do we refine the pipeline we have, or do we just try with different technology? And what we do really is we took what the pipeline that was there originally from the Tomb Raider games, and we hired like a tools programmer to really try to make it work differently and enable us to do another vertical slice that would then prove that we were able to reach our goals, which led to this kind of game, which is pretty much closer than what we aimed for in the beginning. And this is really what made us, what proved to us that we were ready to tackle the whole game and go into full production. So once you have the vertical slice that's working fine, every pipeline is validated, then you can go into full production and just do this and duplicate it like 15 times. And then this is a screenshot from the beta, which you can see the lighting is a bit better, but ultimately it's kind of the same kind of render that we had with the second vertical slice, which means that we achieved our goals. So about the technology beyond the games, one thing you don't see much in production is 3ds Max and Maya being used at the same time for kind of the same thing on the production. On our side, we use Maya for animation, modeling, and level art, and 3ds Max for character modeling, props modeling, and also character skinning, and of course MotionBuilder for animation and motion captures. The historical reason why we use the dual editor pipeline, I'll first just run through the how it works actually. You have 3ds Max and MotionBuilder that can export both their data in FBX format, and then what we do is that we kind of convert everything to be able to read it from the engine. But at the same time, it's possible for us to take some things that were exported from 3ds Max and just re-import them in MotionBuilder in Maya and really do the back and forth. And the reason that we did that is that first here you have like a part of the game running into Maya. Here, same kind of example in Game GUI. Game GUI is our in-game editor, so everything is then processed by the GUI, and then the level editors can do the gameplay in that editor. And then you have Max characters. So how the pipeline works? The pros is that we're getting, of course, the best from both worlds. If you're using like both editors, it's kind of a given. Also, there's the fact that the original pipeline was done in Maya because people in Crystal Dynamics were kind of familiar with it, and they decided to go that way. The thing is that we're in Montreal, and most of the game companies in Montreal use 3ds Max. So lots of artists that were local that we tried recruiting were kind of not sure about coming in, and you know, when you're proficient in some tool and that you've been becoming an expert for 10 years, you're not necessarily keen to switch over. So for us, it meant easier recruiting and easier to find people that were proficient but in both tools. And it also meant that anyone that could be hired could start pretty easily on the tools because they would be familiar with either one of those tools. Of course, there are some cons to it. It means more support needed on the production floor because all the problems that can arise from Maya or from 3ds Max are going to arise twice. You also have to develop your in-game tools twice because you need exporters for both tools. And also you have some focus lost on some applications, so it's not always clear what should go into which editor, what should go into the game editor, and at some point doing the back and forth mean that some things would be developed many times over, and of course at the end stability is always a problem.